And as we had discussed in the last discussion, that the the mood of the discourse had abruptly changed. Sutta Goswami was so far talking about the loving exchanges between Lord Krishna and his queens in Dwarka, and then he suddenly begins to talk about the Battle of Mahabharat, the genocide that was caused not directly by Krishna, but something that he caused indirectly to happen. And then we had discussed that this was basically Sutta Goswami saying, bringing an end to a discussion of the pastimes of Krishna. So he had been talking about Krishna for the last 5 chapters. He had already answered the question of the sages, but he was just drawn into the nectar of Krishna Katha. And as a preacher, he realized that he had to speak the Bhagavatam also. So he stops at that point, and before exiting the discussion of Krishna, he wanted to leave behind a philosophical understanding, lest people might think that Krishna's birth is material, his activities are conditioned by the modes. So in the concluding verses, he makes these 2 points, that Krishna's birth is not material, he's always spiritual, and all his activities are also untainted by the modes of material nature, because they're actually between Krishna and his devotees, who are completely. So the devotees are described to be an extension of Krishna's Chitta Shakti. So they're completely spiritual. So the activities are also spiritual. So we'll resume for 111:37. Tammayam manyate loko haya sangam api sanginam atmaopamaye manjua manujama vyapranvanam yato buddha. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of the ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. So Sutta Goswami is acknowledging that despite the fact that he has given a philosophical and a spiritual basis that can help us understand that there is nothing material about Krishna, but he says that there will still be people who will think. They will think that Krishna is a historical figure who was a great warrior, a great statesman and politician, but nevertheless a historical figure. Others may consider him to be a rake, a person who freely mingled with the opposite sex, and one who did not distinguish. So he mingled with his own wives, and he had many wives. He mingled with other single women, and he mingled with other married women. So such things will be said about Krishna. So the verse says that ayam manyate loko hi, that all these common men, loka, he will certainly will assume manyate about Krishna. So Krishna is referred to as tam, as a pronoun over here. What do they refer? What will they speculate? That asangam api sangam, api sangina. So asangam means that one who is detached, and sanginam is one who is attached. So they say even though, so asangam api, that even though he is detached, sanginam, they will assume that he is attached. Jiva Goswami in Priti Sandarbha 137 says that common men may accept that God is unattached. So that is the Asangam. But when he associates with Prakriti, that is when he descends to the material world, he becomes conditioned, and that is Sangina. So they will work on this. They will work on this premise that fine, maybe there is a God, maybe the God's name is Krishna. But when he came to the material world, he became conditioned, and just like we are conditioned, God is also prone to be conditioned when he comes to the material. So they use that to justify their own conditioning. Sometimes people say that what to speak of us? Even when God comes to the material world, he acts like us. He fights with his enemies. So they will say that his activities were just like us. So what it means is that our activities are ratified because even God does all those activities. So they say Atma Opamya, that just like ourselves, he was engaged, Vyapravana, like any other, like Manujam, like any other common man. And then Sutta Goswami says you have to accept the fact that people will say like this. That some people will deny Krishna's divinity, and some people may accept Krishna's divinity, but they will deny his divinity when he was interacting in the material world. And then he says that the root cause of this is, so he says yata abudha. The root cause of this is that they do not know. So he says they're abudha. That buddhi is intelligence, so that they lack intelligence or they lack knowledge. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that this means that due to ignorance only, they always think of Lord Krishna as like themselves and make their own conclusions, which is absurd and unauthentic from the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is also why Krishna glorifies the position of those who understand the nature of his birth and activities. So there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna specifically glorifies these people. Does anybody remember that verse? So the verse appears in the 4th chapter, Janma Karma Cha Medevyam Yome Veti Tatvata Takta Deham Punarjanmam Neti Mam Yeti So Arjuna. So he says, Man Janma Karma Cha Medevyam Yetima, that one who understands that my birth and activities are divine, on giving up this body, will not take birth again. So they are Buddha, that they understand that when Krishna takes birth, his birth is non-material. And when he performs activities, they are not conditioned by the modes of material nature. Why? Because they understand Krishna's real position. Okay, next verse, 111:38. Etad ishanam ishasya prakristhapi tadgunaha na yujyate sadatmasthair yatha buddhis tadashraya. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. So the previous verse talked about the abudhas, those who are foolish. This verse talks about the buddhi, about the intelligent. And why are they intelligent? Because their intelligence, buddhis, is eternally situated, sadatmasa, in the shelter of Krishna, tad ashraya. So in this situation, they understand that even though api Krishna comes in contact with the material nature, prakritistha, he is never affected, na yujate, by the moods, tadguna. So etad ishanam Ishasya. This they understand is the divinity of Krishna. Ishanam Ishasya. So, so even though he appears to be Tadguna, that even though he appears to be in the material world, na yujyate, but he is not affected. So Sutta Goswami says that this not only describes the position of Krishna, it also describes the position of the devotees. That even though they have appeared in the material world, even though their activities seem to be material, conditioned by the modes, but just like Krishna, they are also not affected by either the material birth or by the material modes. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, they also give a deeper perspective of this verse. So would they say that an objecting person might say that let us agree that the Lord's pastimes with women are non-material because the women belong to his Chit Shakti. But Krishna had a material birth. He had a material body. His birth was from material parents in the material Yadu dynasty. In the material world, he was perceived by material senses, by those who had material senses, and he himself perceived with his material senses and made distinctions between friends like Arjun and foes like Jarasa. Therefore, it cannot be denied that he was associated with the gunas. So if you remember, there are two things that are being talked about. One is Krishna's birth, and the other is the activities that he performed. So some people might outright reject that Krishna's birth is spiritual. So they might say that when Krishna takes birth in the material world, he is material. Now, Prabhupada and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur say that some people might accept that Krishna is God, but they will say that even though he is God, his activities in the material world were conditioned by the modes of material nature. And then they can give all these examples to support it. That he made distinction between friends and foes, between Arjuna and Jarasandha. He married. He was perceived by those who were not devotees. Even Duryodhan could see him. Even Jarasandha could see him, which means that he was existing in the material realm. So then they answer this question by talking about the potency of Krishna. That while it is true that Krishna was present in the material world, but he was not affected by the material world. And the analogy that is given here is that of the spider. That the spider spins a web and then it lives in the web. But it is never trapped by the web. So it is the cause of the web, because the web comes from within the body of the spider. It maintains the web. And when it is done, then it actually takes the web back into its body. So the web may trap flies and other insects, but it will never affect the spider. So similarly, the modes, they come from Krishna, and he may appear to be intimately present within the modes, but he is never affected by the modes. And when there is no need, he takes the modes away. So Prabhupada in the purport says that actually he is in contact with such qualities because he is the ultimate source of everything. Yet he is above the action of such qualities. He is therefore known as Yogeshwara, or master of mystic power, or in other words, the all-powerful. So Sutta Goswami gives another way to understand this by comparing Krishna to the intelligence of the pure devotees. So he says that just like the intelligence of the pure devotees, So one reason he says that is to glorify the pure devotees, that because they are in contact with Krishna, they acquire qualities like Krishna. Another reason that he gives this is also for us to understand. So we may not be able to understand Krishna, but if you're fortunate to come in contact with the pure devotee, then we can understand the same thing is also in play with them, that they're completely within the material world. They eat, drink, sleep, they grow old, they die, and they get angry, they laugh. If there is imminent danger, they 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 protect themselves. But that does not mean that they are a product of the material world, because they're fully connected with Krishna. So, observing the behavior of the pure devotees, it is easier for us to extrapolate it and see that just like these pure devotees have no connection with the material world, even though fully off the material world, Krishna is more so. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives three verses to substantiate it. He quotes Svetasvatara Upanishad 6:11, Sakshi Cheta Kevalo Nirgunascha. The Lord is the witness, the consciousness, and completely without gunas. Then in the Vishnu Puran, it is said, Satvadhyana Santishe Yatrasya Prakrata Guna. The material gunas like sattva, rajas, and tamas do not exist in the Lord. And then he quotes Bhagavatam 10:88:5, that the Lord, however, has no connection with the material worlds. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-seeing, eternal witness, who is transcendental to material nature. One who worships him also becomes similarly free from the modes. And Jiva Goswami quotes another verse from Bhagavatam 3:19. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Okay, we'll do the next verse, which is the last verse in the chapter, and then after that we can break for any questions, comments. Tamminireya balamudha strainam chanuvartam rataha apramana vido bhartur ishwaram mataya yataha. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Shri Krishna, the beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. So the previous verses talked about the so-called material interactions from the perspective of Krishna. So this verse explains that why did Krishna engage in this so-called material interaction? And because Krishna was aware that there will be confusion arising out of it when people see him interacting in a material ways. So 4 reasons are given. So one is that he performed these leelas to reciprocate with his devotees. The second is out of his causeless mercy, which means that even though when he left, his leelas were still left behind him for other devotees to relish. The third is because of a sense of duty, and that is why he enacted pastimes like, or he enacted conditions for the Mahabharata war to be fought and the miscreants to be annihilated. And the fourth is his transcendental pleasure. The Krishna also has certain rasas that he can fully appreciate them in the material world, like fighting with demons. There are no demons in the spiritual world, but in the material world there are plenty of demons. So to enjoy that virya rasa, he comes down to the material world. So because of these reasons, he was enacting this seemingly material pastimes, but they were never impacting him materially. So what about the other party in the interactions? So Krishna was enacting so-called material pastimes without being impacted by it. But what about the people with whom he were enacting these pastimes? So this verse talks about the queens of Dwarka. What were they experiencing? So did they see Krishna as completely detached and simply playing a role as if that of an actor in a drama? So Sutta Goswami says that they were completely unaware of his divinity, very much like that of an atheist. The difference was that they were unaware of Krishna's divinity because of the influence of Krishna's internal energy. Because this Aishwarya bhav that comes into play when one is aware of Krishna being as a god, it interferes with the intimate exchange that the devotees can have with Krishna. So in order to facilitate this enjoyment, Krishna extends his Yogmaya. And because of that, they forget that Krishna is God, just like an atheist. But the atheist forgets that Krishna is God because he wants to be God. So that's why Krishna extends his external energy, his Mahamaya. And under that, they forget about Krishna's divinity. So in Preeti Sandarbha 139, Jiva Goswami, he quotes 411 to explain this mood of reciprocation. This is the ye yathamam prapadyante tam tate bhajamyam. Similarly, in his praise, Lord Brahma, this is in 1014 too, he says that this reciprocation is only the result of Krishna's mercy. So one cannot artificially develop this. So two kinds of people are described. One kind, and both of them have the same end result, that they forget about Krishna's divinity. So what Jiva Goswami says is that while the atheist forgets Krishna's divinity because of his own desire, the devotee cannot artificially forget Krishna's divinity. It is only when Krishna, out of his mercy, extends his Yogmaya that the devotee forgets. So the reason they are making this point is to, again, Sutta Goswami has a strong preaching mood. So the reason they're making this point is that one should not say that I am not aware of Krishna's divinity, just like the gopis were not aware of Krishna's divinity. That I am at the same level of the gopis or the queens in Dwarka. They were completely unaware that Krishna is God. I'm also completely unaware that Krishna is God. We are both at the same level. So in case of the gopis, it was because of Krishna's mercy, anugrah, that he extended his Yogmaya. For the atheist, it is Krishna simply reciprocating with their desire. It's their own action that has resulted in it. So Prabhupada in the purport, he writes that the wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so there might not be any flaw of exchange. And then they took for granted that the Lord was a henpecked husband. The Lord can be known, later on he said, the Lord can be known by the mercy of the Lord only and by no other means. But since the dealings of the Lord with his wives were based on pure transcendental love and devotion, the wives are all on the transcendental plane without material contamination. So this ends chapter 11, and I can stop here and see if there are any questions on chapter 11.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one question on the 37, like the link between 37 and 39, or like not link, but trying to understand how do we reconcile this. That 37 says, out of ignorance, like, we think that, we are not able to understand basically. And then 39 like says that, uh, by the Lord's mercy can we, only by the Lord's mercy can we understand him. Um, so like how do we like reconcile these two things?
So I'm trying to understand your question. So your question is that uh, that earlier on we spoke that those who are ignorant, abudha, they can't understand
Right.
Krishna. And then later on we said that Krishna is known by only by his mercy. So I guess the point that you're trying to make is that does it imply that there are some people who are recipient of Krishna's mercy so they can understand Krishna, and then there are some people to whom Krishna withdraws his mercy? So the burden of understanding and not understanding Krishna is on Krishna, not on the devotee. So the 39 verse is a good question. The 39 verse actually uh, tries to make the distinction that um, those those who know Krishna, ultimately it's because of Krishna's mercy. But actually it's not the 39 verse, it's the 38th verse that I'm talking about. That those who do not understand Krishna is because they have not done anything to attract Krishna's mercy. So the principle of ye thamam prapadyante, that when one approaches Krishna with a desire to understand him, then Krishna extends his yogmaya potency. When one approaches Krishna with a desire to not understand him, then Krishna extends his mahamaya potency. But both these activities, they are the result of willing choices that we make.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this is Achita Priya. I have a question. Like right now, the wives have been made forgotten based on the Yogamaya potency. So, but what kind of spiritual activity would they perform? Like now that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for us, so we kind of pray Krishna. But at that time, what would be the wives would be doing for the spiritual activity? They
So that's a good question. That we consider activities in relationship to Krishna to be spiritual. And if the wives are perceiving Krishna as material, then their activities, following that logic, would also be considered as material. And well, let me uh, let me put that question back to the group and see if somebody has thoughts about it. So you understand the question, right?
No, Prabhuji, can you repeat? Sorry.
So the question is that uh, spirituality is activities that are performed in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, for instance, the wives of Krishna, they are not aware that Krishna is God. So for them, like Prabhupada says, he is their henpecked husband. And they're relating to him in that way. So how is it that their activities would be considered as spiritual? So there are so many henpecked husbands in the universe, right? And their wives are dominating them, and they are, the things that Prabhupada says, that they dominate them, they love them, whatever it is. What's the distinction? I'm sorry, Mataji, you were saying something, I cut you off.
Well, I had two thoughts, Prabhu. One is there, it's the pastime of the Lord where he's enjoying that aspect of relationship with his internal potency. But I also was thinking that just like, we talk about the holy name and we say that we don't have to know how it works, like a medicine, but it still works. So similarly, anything related to the Lord, be it so-called henpecked, is still spiritual, I guess. That's what I was thinking.
Okay. Good points. Thank you, Mataji. Any other thoughts?
In similar line, Prabhuji, like Mataji told, that as long as the relation is with Krishna, then it is spiritual, whether we know that is Krishna or not. Like in the sense, if I think that some great personality as God, and if I worship him, that doesn't make the activity spiritual. Similarly, even if I do not know, if I am favorably inclined, then it becomes spiritual. Otherwise, it cannot be. Kamsa also is thinking about Krishna constantly, but he is not performing any spiritual activity. There is no devotional service.
So you're talking about the favorable part, the fact that they're interacting favorably towards.
Favorably, that to Krishna only.
That to Krishna. Okay.
And I was thinking, like, Guruji, like the activities that are related to Krishna and one, like, favorably, of course, is they are purifying. So whether you know it or not, even you're performing activities or devotional services, and in one way or the other, they purify um, purify us, purify our hearts.
Thank you. So those are all valid points, and they actually cover the response that the fact that these activities were directed towards Krishna, the fact they were favorably inclined towards Krishna, knowingly or unknowingly. The only point that I would add to this is that the position, and I think a specific question of the queens of Dwarka, so they are all considered to be incarnations of Lakshmi Devi. So the position of the queens is that they know that Krishna is God, but it does not affect them. So Yogamaya does not make them forget that Krishna is God. What Yogamaya makes them is that they become immune to that effect of the knowledge of Krishna is God. So the intimate dealings that they have, the rasa that they have, that does not get contaminated or commingled with this thought of I'm dealing with God. Prabhupada makes this point often that the gopis, they were great yogis and they were great jnanis. So amongst the gopis who were present, the sages of Dantakaranya, they were great yogis. Amongst the gopis, who else were present? The Vedas personified. So great source of knowledge. So they, through the process of jnana or yoga, they had already reached that stage of fully understanding Krishna's divinity. But Krishna's Yogamaya comes into play now, that it stops them from being affected by it. So it's a material example, but the wife of a very influential man, she knows that he's an influential man, that he's powerful, and that there are many people, the extent of his power, they know all that. But the force of the love is so strong that it does not matter anymore. It's not that they don't know. When they're chastising their husband, it's not that they don't know the power of their husband. They know it. But the power of the love is so that it makes the other awareness become diminished. So I would say these are the 3 points that would factor into them. That the fact that their interactions were directed towards Krishna, the fact that it was directed in a favorable way, and the fact that the intensity of their love was so strong that it dwarfed these realization of Krishna's divinity.
Thank you, Prabhu. Basically, it says like you're saying, like because they were already attained a stage, and as Lakshmi Devi knows her position, and at the same time, the pastimes are in such a way that Krishna's their love towards Krishna. Yeah, the material example really helped. Thank you so much.
Thank you for a good question, Mataji. Um, any other question, or we can proceed to the next chapter?
And one more point that I was thinking probably that they are cooperating to, that is Krishna's plan. That is why they forgot. It is not because they wanted to forget. Yes.
That too. That too. Goes back to the same point that they're operating under Krishna's internal energy, under his yoga maya. Okay, so we'll go on to the 12th chapter. The 12th chapter is titled The Birth of Emperor Parikshit. And I'll briefly go over the storyline, the flow of the chapter, and then we'll discuss as usual, verse by verse. So the chapter begins with the sages of Naimisharanya. They again ask the same question to Sutta Goswami about the glories of Parikshit Maharaj. And before talking about the glories of Parikshit Maharaj, Sutta Goswami first talks about the glories of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Then he talks about the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And then is the conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthir and the Brahmanas about future predictions about Parikshit Maharaj, which essentially is, even though they're talking about the future, but that essentially is the glories of Parikshit Maharaj. And in talking about the future of Maharaj Parikshit, they talk all the way till his death, that he will die by the bite of Takshak. And the chapter will end again with Sutta Goswami talking about Maharaj Yudhishthir, that how he performs the Rajasuya Yagya, and Krishna comes to attend it, and then Krishna leaves Hastinapur once again and goes back to Dwarka. So that's the general flow of the chapter. We'll start with the first verse, 112:1. Shaunako vacha ashvathamna pratastena brahma shishnaru tejasa utaraya hatagarbha ishna jivitaha punaha. The sage Saunak said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwathama. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada in the purport, he says that the sages assembled in the forest of Naimisharanya inquired from Sutta Goswami about the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. But in the course of the narration, there other topics like the release of the Brahmastra by the son of Drona, the punishment by Arjun, Queen Kunti Dev's prayers, the Pandavas' visit to the place where Bhishma Dev was lying, his prayers, and thereafter the Lord's departure for Dwarka were discussed. His arrival to Dwarka and residing with the 16,000 wives, etc., was narrated. The sages were absorbed in hearing such descriptions, but now they wanted to turn to the original topic, and thus they made the inquiry to Shaunaka Rishi. So, the inquiry by Shaunaka Rishi. So, the subject of the release of the Brahmastra weapon by Ashwathama is renewed. So, as we had discussed in the previous chapter, that Sutta Goswami had got engrossed in Krishna Katha. Now he himself had realized it, so that's why he began to wind up by speaking about Krishna's position in the material world. And now the sages, they again asked the same question that they asked to get Suta Goswami back to the discussion about Parishit Maharaj. Next verse. तस्य जन्म महाबुद्धे कर्माणि च महात्मनः निधनं च यथैश्वासित सप्रत्यये गतवान् यथा. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place? And what did he achieve after his death? So this verse is a summary of the 4 questions that the sages had asked in the 4th chapter, which had gotten Parikshit, Suta Goswami speaking. So they had asked about. So this is the 4th chapter, verses 9 to 12. That Parishit Maharaj was a first-class devotee, and his birth and activities are wonderful. Tell us all about it. Tell us all about the kingdom. Why did he die? What was the reason that he was cursed? So they've summarized these 4 questions again to get Suta's attention back to the discussions on Parikshit Maharaj. So this verse also indicates the cusp of the Dwarka Yuga and Kali Yuga. I'm sorry, the Dwapar Yuga and the Kali Yuga. So the activities of Maharaj Parikshit, so they call him Raj Rishi. So this is more representative of Dwapar Yuga, when the kings were Raja Rishis. They were actually rishis who were executing the kingly duties. The cursing by Shringi is the Kali Yuga activity, where the Brahmins have fallen. So this verse also brings into focus the intersection between the Dwapar Yuga and Kali Yuga. Prabhupada in the purport, he says that Maharaj Parikshit is especially famous as one who is protected by Vishnu. And when he was unduly cursed by a Brahman son, he could have invoked the mercy of the Lord to save him. But he did not want to do because he was a pure devotee. A pure devotee never asked the Lord for any undue favor. And then later on he says, because he knew also that the age of Kali had begun, and that the first symptom of the age, namely degradation of the highly talented Brahmana community, had also begun. He did not want to interfere with the current of time. So we see the activities of Maharaj Parikshit as a king of Dwapar Yuga. That he was unduly cursed, he had the power to reverse the curse. He knew it was not justified, but he did not do it. And then there is the activities of Shringi. So as a Brahmana, forgiveness is his strength. As a devotee, he should have recognized that Maharaj Parikshit is also a first-class devotee of Krishna. And an occasional transgression of a devotee should be overlooked. And as a guru of the society, he should recognize that the praja was dependent on Maharaj Parikshit. And when the pious king is there, the praja becomes pious. And because of these reasons, he should have refrained from cursing him. So, and if he had intelligence, he should have understood that punishment is always commensurate with the activity. So for a small transgression, putting a dead snake around the shoulders of his father, cursing him to die was a disproportionate. But because Shringi did not have this quality of forgiveness, he did not have this quality of a devotee, he did not have the quality of being a guru, and he did not have common intelligence. So this indicates what is forthcoming in the Kali Yuga. Okay, next verse 112.3. Tad itam shatum ichhamo gatidam yadi manyase bruhi na shadadananam yasya jnanam madakshukaha. We all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Sukadev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. So the sages are now giving an explanation that why have they interrupted Sutta Goswami's discourses? That they want to now hear the Bhagavatam. So they say we all respectfully want to hear about him to whom Sukadev Goswami imparted this transcendental knowledge, which is Bhagavatam. So the sages in Naimishan essentially are saying, now please now continue with the recitation of the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada, in these verses, you see that there is a lot of preaching that he does in these verses, and Prabhupada is just, because again, like Sutta Goswami, his mood is that of preaching. So he uses these verses as a launching platform, and to basically make preaching points. So some of the points that Prabhupada makes in this purport is that he says that Jnanam or transcendental knowledge can only be transferred through Kirtanam, which is the media of speaking, and Shravanam, which is respectful hearing. And then he says Shravana and Kirtan are the two most important of the 9 points. Both the speaker and the audience are benefited. And third point he makes is that both the speaker and the audience should be bona fide. And then he gives the example of fake gurus. That sometimes fake gurus, they try to impart spirituality by giving electric shocks to the disciple. And then after that, the disciple becomes unconscious, the guru becomes unconscious, and then they both celebrate. And he said he's cautioning us that we should be careful about receiving spirituality through such fake methods. And then finally he says, what are the qualifications of the disciple? That ardent hearing from the bona fide master is the only way to receive transcendental knowledge. And there is no need for medical performances or occult mysticism for miraculous effects. The process is simple, but only the sincere party can achieve the desired results. Okay, next verse, 112.4. Sutta vacha apapilat dharmaraja pitravad rajanyan praja nispara sarva kamebhya Krishna padanusevaya. Sutta Goswami said, Emperor Yudhishthir administered generously to everyone during his reign. He was exactly like his father, this is Maharaj Pandu. He had no personal ambition and was free from all sorts of sense gratification because of his continuous service unto the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. So in 3 verses, 4, 5, and 6, the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir is described. And previously, and this is in the 10th chapter, verses 3 to 6, Sutta Goswami had also described the condition. This is right after the instructions of Bhishma Dev. That time Sutta Goswami also describes the glories of the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir to show the efficacy of the instructions. The only difference is at that time he glorifies the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir. This time he glorifies Maharaj Yudhishthir. And the reason that he glorifies Maharaj Yudhishthir is to establish the glory of Parikshit Maharaj. So the point that he makes is, it goes both ways, that because Parikshit Maharaj came from such a glorious ancestry, he was glorious. And the second point that he makes is that the glory of Parikshit Maharaj can be estimated by the fact that somebody as great as Maharaj Yudhishthir got the opportunity to be his grandfather. So both ways, it establishes the glory of Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit. So Yudhishthir, two qualities of Yudhishthir are described in this verse that are worthy of glorification. So Sutta says, Nispara Sarva Kamebhya, that he was detached from all kinds of sense gratification. And the second quality is Krishna Padanu Sevaya, that he was completely absorbed in serving Krishna's lotus feet. So these two qualities are essential qualities for a devotee: material detachment and spiritual attachment. So the point that is making is that the qualities that Maharaj Yudhishthir was displaying was that of an exalted devotee, that he was completely materially detached and he was fully spiritually attached. So Prabhupada has a long purport in this, and again, like I said, Prabhupada uses these verses for preaching purposes. So I'll just summarize it, that you should read the purport for the points that Prabhupada makes. They're preaching points, but essentially what he's saying is that only when a kingdom is ruled by a pious king who is Krishna conscious can the kingdom flourish. And any other situation is going to result in different kinds of material distress. So then he says that for the material, for the praja, for people to experience real happiness, they must surrender to a spiritually advanced soul as their king, and that way they can experience both material happiness as well as spiritual advancement. Because Sutta Goswami has already glorified his kingdom, that how the rains fell in time, there was ample food for everybody to eat, there was ample wealth to go around. So there's not a material opulence. And there also Prabhupada makes almost the same point, that even material opulence can come from spiritual advancement. Okay, next verse, 112.5. Sampada kritva loka mahishi bharatara Jambudvip adhipatyam cha yashashatri divam gatam. News even reached the celestial planets about Maharaj Yudhishthir's worldly possessions, the sacrifices by which he would attain a better destination, his queen, his stalwart brothers, his extensive land, his sovereignty over the planet Earth, his fame, etc. So these verses again, they continue to glorify Maharaj Yudhishthir, and the index that they're using is his fame. That how great was Maharaj Yudhishthir, that his fame even reached the heavenly kingdom, where the devas don't really care as a rule much about what's going on in the lower lokas. But Maharaj Yudhishthir's qualities were so exemplary, and some of them are described, that Mahishi, his queen, the Kratva, the sacrifices, Sampada, his opulence, then his dominion on the entire planet, his fame, then his brothers, all of them spread all over the three worlds. Prabhupada comments on this particular aspect of the verse where it says that the sacrifices by which he would attain a better destination. The Prabhupada comments on that to say that that's the only way to attain a better destination. When one wants to go to Svarglok or the higher loks, the only way to attain this is through the process of sacrifices. And he quotes Bhagavad Gita 9:29, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Pitran Yanti Pitra Devan, Bhutani Yanti Bhutejya, Yanti Matyajano Pima. That depending on who you worship the demigods, you go there, you worship the ancestors, you go there, You worship the ghosts and spirits, you go to them, and those who worship me will come to come to me. So this verse also brings forth the fact that the devotees of Krishna enjoy all kinds of material opulences. So some of the opulences are given, but Maharaj Yudhishthira actually had enjoyed many material opulences. Okay, next verse, 112.6. Kim te kama suraspara mukunda manaso dvejaha adijarur mudam rajna shuditasya yathetare. O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king was so enchanting that the denizens of heaven aspired for it. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. So the previous verse, it talked about the fact that Yudhishthira's fame reached the denizens of the heavenly kingdom. This verse goes one step beyond, saying that when they heard about his glories, even they aspired for it. Even the facilities for enjoyment are a millionfold higher in the upper planetary system, but Maharaj Yudhishthira's opulences were so enchanting that even they were aspiring for it. But what was the effect that it had on Maharaj Yudhishthira? So Srila Prabhupada translates that because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates this in a little different way. So he translates it as a question to the sages. And so the way he writes it is, did these things give joy to the king, whose mind was only fixed on Mukunda and nothing else? Same point, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur he presents it as a rhetorical question. That did these things give any joy? And the answer, of course, is no. So the verse talks about the difference between material and spiritual satiety. So Prabhupada says that the whole material world is full of hungry living beings. The hunger is not for good food, shelter, or sense gratification. The hunger is for the spiritual atmosphere. Due to the ignorance only, they think that the world is dissatisfied because there is no sufficient food, shelter, defense, and objects of sense gratification. This is called illusion. So the point that Prabhupada makes over here is that the real reason that Maharaj Yudhishthira was heard about in the heavenly kingdoms, the real reason that they aspired to be like Maharaj Yudhishthira was because he was a devotee. And then he translates it to the material world, that in the material world, everybody is looking for something. And they try to find that something in food, shelter, clothing, sense gratification. So they're looking for the right thing, but in the wrong places. And that's why he makes the point that the real quest gets satisfied when it leads one to spiritual understanding. So that's when you're looking for the right thing in the right place. So some of the verses that are made to collaborate the point that Srila Prabhupada has made, that why is the need for devotional service so real? And in Nectar of Devotion, the point is made that devotional service surpasses even liberation. It's called Moksha Lagu Akrit. Why? Because Savai Pumsha Paro Dharma. Because devotional service is our dharma. What is dharma? Dharma is that which sustains our existence. So what sustains our existence is devotional service because it is our eternal nature. Dharma is what we are, servants of Krishna, and what we are made for, devotional service. Only if we act naturally can we be satiated. Otherwise, not. So this is just the cause and effect that is explained through the Shastra Chakshu. Okay, next verse, 112.7. Matur garbhagata vira sattada brigunandana dadarsha purusham kanchit dhyamano astra tejasa. O son of Bhrigu, Shaunak, when the child Parikshit, the great fighter, was in the womb of his mother, Uttara, and was suffering from the burning heat of the Brahmastra thrown by Ashwathama, he could observe the Supreme Lord coming to him. So, in the previous 3 verses, Sutta Goswami has glorified Maharaj Yudhishthir as a suitable ancestor to Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj will now be glorified as a suitable descendant to Maharaj Yudhishthir. So in the next 5 verses, from 7 to 11, we will see the vision of Maharaj Parikshit while he is in the womb of his mother, specifically at the time when he was attacked by the Brahmastra. So Sutta Goswami says that while he is in the womb of his mother, he sees both life and death. So he sees death in the form of the Brahmastra, and he sees life in the form of Krishna. So, he glorifies Parikshit Maharaj as Veera, the great fighter, to indicate that because he was a great fighter, he was enduring the terrible heat of the Brahmastra. And Prabhupada says that even in that helpless condition, the child Parikshit endured the unbearable temperature due to his being a great fighter. For this reason, the word Vira is used. So Prabhupada also uses this to comment on the situation of the living entity within the womb of the mother. So in the purport, he makes an interesting statement. He says death generally involves remaining in trance for 7 months. So Prabhupada is considering the first 7 months an extension of the death in the previous lifetime. So because the first 7 months the embryo is not fully sentient, so in a way it's in the trance. So Prabhupada is saying death generally involves remaining in trance for 7 months. After 7 months, the child becomes conscious and begins to experience the discomfort within the womb. So what kind of discomfort? So the discomfort is that the child is upside down and is trapped in a small enclosure. He is constantly burned by the fire of digestion from the mother's belly. And the pressure from the gases creates a very uncomfortable situation for the child. In addition to that, there are many worms that are biting into the soft skin of the child. So all this is the discomfort that the child is beginning to experience after the 7th month. So Prabhupada goes on to say that when he is awake from trance, he feels the inconvenience of being confined within the womb, and thus he wants to come out, and sometimes, fortunately, prays to the Lord for liberation. So this same condition is also described by Lord Kapila to his mother Devahuti in the 3rd canto, 31st chapter. So Lord Kapila says that the child just remains like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month, after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place. Okay, next verse, 112.8. Anjushtha matram amalam spurat purata maulinam apivya darshanam shyamam tajit vasasam achutam. He, the Lord, was only thumb high, but he was all transcendental. He had a very beautiful blackish infallible body, and he wore a dress of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. So previous verse described the condition of Parikshit Maharaj. This verse describes the vision of Parikshit Maharaj. So it proves that Parikshit Maharaj had direct audience of the Lord at this time. And then later on in the 39th verse of the chapter, the astrologers will also refer to this pastime to give the name of the child Parikshit. So Parikshit means one who examines. So because he would continue to examine among men to see that if he could still see that form of Krishna that he saw in the womb, his name will be Parikshit. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary says that blackish Lord with lightning colored clothes appeared in the sky of Uttara's womb like a lightning decorated cloud to extinguish the conflagration caused by the Brahmastra. That gives a poetic rendition to this vision. Okay, next verse, 112.9. Shrimad Dirga Chaturbahum Tapta Kanchana Kundalam Shatajjaksham Gadapanim Atmana Sarvato Disham Paribrahmanatam Uchkabham Brahmayantam Gadam Muhu. The Lord, thus enriched with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and his eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. So Srila Prabhupada says that Parikshit Maharaj's darshan of Krishna was in the form of Paramatma. And he writes in the purport, it is said in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, that the Supreme Lord Govinda, by his own plenary portion, enters into the halo of the universe and distributes himself as Paramatma or Super Soul, not only within the heart of every living being, but also within every atom of the material elements. Thus the Lord is all-pervading, and by his inconceivable potency, thus he entered the womb of Uttara to save his beloved devotee, Maharaj Parikshit. So the verse that Prabhupada refers that in Brahma Samhita is 535. Ekopaso rachetam jagadanda koti yashaktirasti jagadanda chayayadanta. So this is describing Krishna as Paramatma. Prabhupada also makes the point that Krishna as Paramatma, he exists within each and every atom of the universe. And this particular statement of Paramatma, description of Paramatma by Prabhupada, has also led to some additional discussions, which sometimes often tend to be speculative. Because at another point, Srila Prabhupada says that the Paramatma is never alone. He is always accompanied by the Jiva. So if you combine the two statements, then the natural statement, which Prabhupada never made, but the natural statement is that because the Paramatma is present between the atoms, there are Jivas also present within the atoms. So the statement is neither refuted nor validated. It's kind of there. But you'll sometimes see people bringing up these statements to make this points. So Prabhupada goes on to say that just because Krishna is a thumb high, it does not impinge on his divinity. So he says that God is always God. Whether he appears as a boar, whether he appears as a fish, whichever form that he appears, small or big, he is always he's always God. So Prabhupada said that the Krishna present within the atoms is exactly the same as a Krishna that I'm sorry, this is not Prabhupada says, this is just a summary of his purport, that the Krishna that is present within the atoms is exactly the same as the Krishna from whose body the universes emanate, though there is a difference in the magnitude. And the reason that Krishna enters into the womb of Uttara is to protect Parikshit Maharaj. So Prabhupada quotes the chapter 931, Shipram Bhavati Dharmatma Shashvak Shantam Nikachati, that you declare it boldly, Arjun, that my devotees never perish. So while we are talking about Krishna's protection, we can also talk about the apparent lack of protection of Krishna. So at this point, one might say that Krishna entered into the womb of Uttara to protect Parikshit Maharaj. Why did he not protect Parikshit Maharaj when he was cursed by Shringi? And Jiva Goswami says that unless we incorporate the concept of Achintya in the conception of God, we cannot understand him. That unless we understand that some things about Krishna, not something, that everything about Krishna is inconceivable, we will not be able to conceive him. That why did Krishna protect Parikshit Maharaj in the womb? We can give answers to that. But he protected him so that he could take birth, so that the Bhagavatam could be spoken, and these would all be valid answers, but they will not be complete answers. One can still say, but Krishna could have done this. But Krishna could have done it, that even though he was cursed, even after the Bhagavatam was spoken, the snake may have bitten Parikshit Maharaj, and at that point Krishna could have protected. So all these are, again, they're valid comments. But really speaking, at some point, we have to answer them that because this is the way that Krishna wanted things to do. Okay, I'll do one more verse and after that we'll stop for discussion. 112.10. Astatreja swagadaya niharam eva gopitaha vidyamantam sanikarshe prayakshata katyasau. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child who thought about who he was. So, a couple of points that are made in this. One is that one must not think that this process of neutralizing the Brahmastra was so difficult that Krishna had to personally enter into the womb of Uttara Devi. Because Sutta Goswami says that how much effort does the sun take to evaporate a dew? No effort. The sun doesn't even know about it, and the morning dew gets evaporated. So comparable to, just to give a sense, for Krishna it was even much more easier. He did it, and he chose to do it in this way. One reason he chose to do it in this way was he wanted to give darshan to Parikshit Maharaj. So that's why Sutta Goswami says that he was absorbed by the child. So Krishna does activities for many reasons. So he did that because it pleased him. He did that because it was explainable. If Krishna had just meditated and the Brahmastra disappeared, it would have been more difficult for people to understand. This is more explainable. That Krishna entered into the womb as Paramatma. He, with his mace, he vanquished the Brahmastra. So one astra being vanquished by another astra. and ultimately he did it because he wanted to give pleasure to the to his devotee. So the acharyas, Prabhupada, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, they also make this point that like Parikshit Maharaj, we are also trapped in the womb of the material nature. We are also trapped in this material world, very much like a child is trapped in the womb. So all the discomfort that has been described, we are also experiencing that. We are experiencing the burning sensation. We are experiencing the sense of being trapped. We are experienced uh, of this is not a natural position. You have a different natural position. And just like Parikshit Maharaj was rescued by Krishna, we can also be rescued by Krishna through the process of devotional service. Okay, so I'll stop over here and see if there's any discussion. If there are no questions, then maybe you can continue with the verses. Is that okay? Okay, so I'll take silence to be assent. 112:11. Vidhuya tad ameyatma bhagavan dharma gup vibhu mishito dashamasya tatreva antradahari. While thus being observed by the child, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of everyone, and the protector of the righteous, who stretches in all direction and who is unlimited by time and space, disappeared at once. So Krishna is glorified by many qualities in this verse. Previous verse, he is glorified as the protector of Maharaj Parikshit by vanquishing the invincible Brahmastra. So the nature of a devotee is that they think about Krishna, but nothing evokes the feeling in a devotee's heart as strongly as being protected by Krishna. So we see that Sutta Goswami here is he is meditating on the protection. He's very enthusiastically meditating on the protection of Krishna. So he says that Krishna is Amayatma, that he is the all-pervading super soul, because of which he was present in the womb of Uttara. So even when observed the size of a thumb, Krishna is still Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he calls Krishna Dharmagup, the protector of righteousness. So he upheld Dharma and protected the sinless Maharaj Parikshit. Then he calls Krishna Vibhu, the Supreme, to indicate that he effortlessly neutralized the invincible Brahmastra, just like a sun evaporates the dew. Then he calls Krishna Hari, one who takes away miseries. And he took away the misery of being scorched or being killed by the Brahmastra. And then he calls Krishna as Dashmas Asya. So Dashmas Asya means one who is dressed by all directions. It also means, so there are 10 directions. Dashmas Asya is one who's dressed by all directions, which means that he's present everywhere. So he disappeared from the sight of Parikshit Maharaj. So Dashma Sasya means that even though he disappeared, he does not really disappear because he's present everywhere. All that he went was from manifest to unmanifest. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he interprets Dashma Sasya also to refer to Parikshit Maharaj. And so this part I could not fully understand, because it is said that Parikshit Maharaj was in the womb for 7 months. But here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Dashmasasya means that being observed by one who has spent 10 months in the womb. So be that it may be, but essentially he refers it to as Krishna being observed by Parikshit Maharaj, even when he became unmanifest. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives so we see that the Sutta Goswami, he has used this so many names for Krishna, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that there is a charming quality that emerges by the interplay of these names. So Sutta Goswami says Hari, and then he says that Krishna entered the womb after stealing the mind of Parikshit Maharaj, so that is why he is called Hari. Then he disappeared, Tatra eva anta. But he disappeared without going anywhere, because he is Vibhu, because he is all powerful. And specifically, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that like a deceitful night prowler, Krishna entered the womb to steal the mind of Maharaj Parikshit. The metaphor is implied. So this is the quality of a thief, that he surreptitiously enters, steals, and then disappears. So that is why Krishna is called Makhan Chor. So the gopis would churn the milk, they would remove all the contaminants from it, and they would extract the purest essence in terms of clarified butter, and then they would wait for Krishna to come and steal it. So in the same mood, the devotees churn their raw hearts with the rod of bhakti. They remove all the anarthas from it, and then they offer the purified love, waiting for him to come as a thief, steal it, and disappear. So why is Krishna compared to a chore, to a thief? Because a thief takes without any expectation of returning it, without any consideration of morality, and without any consideration of ownership. The thief considers that everything belongs to him and takes with impunity. That is the mood of Krishna towards his devotees. He considers everything that belongs to the devotees, including their heart, their mind, their word, their actions, to be his own, and he takes them as his right. He does not offer the devotees any form of compensation for all this. Krishna steals the equanimity, the peace, the happiness, and the mind of his devotees. They become anxious to meet Krishna, so the equanimity is gone. They are unhappy when he is not there, so their happiness is gone. They are agitated when he ignores them, so their peace is gone. And they're constantly thinking about him, so their mind has been taken. Why does Krishna do this clandestinely? Because Krishna acts from inside out. Bhakti is so deep within the heart of the devotee that he may be in full sight and bhakti would still be hidden. So Krishna acts in the most subtle manner. He is imperceptible to all but the most discerning and vigilant. He acts in such a way that even the devotee is not aware of the actions of Krishna. And then why does he disappear like a thief? To increase the mood of separation, which will increase the bhakti. All these are the qualities of a thief. Prabhupada, in his purport, he gives further insights. So he describes Krishna as all-pervading to distinguish him from the jivas who can only exist at one place and exert their influence over the bodies only. So he says, even though a living being is qualitatively one with the Lord, quantitatively there is a big difference between the super soul and the common individual soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, both the living being and the supreme being are said to be all-pervading. So this is verse 820. to yena sarvam idam tatam. Yet there is a difference between these two kinds of all pervading. A common living being or soul can be all pervading within his own limited body, but the Supreme Lord is all pervading in all space and all time. The other point that is made is Krishna is the protector of the righteous because he protects his devotees. So Prabhupada says that actually he protects everyone, even the non-devotees. So he says the Lord is the indirect protector of the unrighteous too, for he rectifies their sins through his external potency. And Prabhupada again compares the situation of Parishit Maharaj to us. He says that this material covering of the effulgent firmament is something like a womb of Mother Nature. And we are all put in the womb by the Lord, the Father of all living beings. He is present everywhere, even in the material womb of Mother Durga. And those who are deserving can see the Lord. So this is one of those verses that has a lot of realizations embedded into it, and then we are thankful to Srila Prabhupada and other acharyas that they unfold it for us to relish. Okay, so I'll stop here. We have a couple of minutes to see if there is any other questions or comments. Okay, doesn't look like there are any questions, so we'll end the class here. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschit kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari. Hare Krishna.